The very first example that we're going to look at in chapter 4 is drug development process. Okay, so here there are relationships among the outcomes from one phase to the next phase to the next phase. So here in this example, we have three phases, okay, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then we have the final phase, which is the FDA approval and registration. So at each phase, so we have a particular level of cost and then time duration. How long will it take for phase 1? Both of which are input variables in stage 1 and that can be simulated because they are not deterministic. So at the end of phase 1 of the drug development, okay, that phase will come out to be either success or failure. If it is failure, that's it. You abandon the project, and that's it. You go for other things to work on. Now, if phase 1 is successful, then you launch phase 2. Again, phase 2 will have a cost associated with that and a time duration. And again, these are simulated. Okay. And at each stage, there is a probability of success, and that probability, again, we're going to be simulating, and we have an initial estimate, and then we will use that as a Bernoulli process to predict either success or failure based on this initial estimate of the probability. So again, in phase 2, we have probabilities. Based on that, we use the Bernoulli process to generate success or failure. And once again, if it is a failure, then project is abandoned. And if the project is, if phase 2 is successful, then you launch phase 3. And once again, we have cost and time associated, which we will be simulating. And there is a probability of the prior probability of success or failure. We use that in a Bernoulli process, failure, abandon. Then if it is phase 3 successful, then we have registration. So you go through the registration, and again, in the registration process, we'll have a cost and time, and also a probability of successful registration, and then launch of the product, okay, or failure, in which case, again, you abandon. If it is successful, then you launch the product, and then you have a profit stream coming in. Okay, what we have to do now is to take all these cash flows, okay, and then discount them back to present time. Okay, and once again, we need to model it in such a way that if there is a failure at any given stage, then future stages are abandoned, and therefore cash flows will be zero. So this is the basic idea about the model. And for cost and duration, okay, so we have cost and time at each phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and the final phase of FDA approval. So we're going to simulate each of them, cost and time, using PERT distribution. So which means we'll need 3 estimates, min, most likely, and max parameter for each stage. Okay. For cost, you need those 3 parameters for each stage, and for time, we have the 3 parameters for each stage. And then once we set up the model, then we run the simulation for repetitions. Okay. So here is the overview of the model. So we're going to simulate cost and duration of each phase, and then we're going to simulate whether it's going to be a successful or failure. Okay, and the cost, once you launch the phase, then the cost is going to occur no matter what, and that cost needs to be discounted back to the present time. Now, the Bernoulli process will determine whether there is going to be no more cash flows, which means it's a failure, you abandon, or it is successful and you go on to the next stage. And then at the final stage, we have profit, profit after registration is zero unless all phases till registration are successful, obviously, and then we want to discount that again to the present time. And the discounted cash flow formula will be any cash flow during that stage. It could be it's negative in all these phases, 1 through FDA approval, because these are all costs, and then a positive value after launch. And all of those future values will have to be brought back to present value with this formula. Okay. Future value is divided by 1 plus the discount rate to the power of how long will it take. So we have to keep track of how long does each phase take based on the duration that we're going to be simulating. And then once you run the simulations, then we take the average of the discounted cash flow at the present time, and that is our expected net present value. So that would be our, the discounted cash flow is our output, and we will find the mean of that output as our objective to maximize or analyze.